Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. My name is Dan Gorodnick. I'm the chair of the City Planning Commission. I want to welcome you to today's review session. The date is May 23rd, 2022. Thank you, commissioners who are present this afternoon. If this is your first time as members of the public with us, if this is your first time visiting on a review session day, this is the day when the staff of the Department of City Planning briefs commissioners on applications that are about to begin the city's official land use process, known as ULURP, or we'll have a public hearing this Wednesday. And we invite you to join us again this Wednesday at 10 o'clock for our public hearings. Today's agenda will start with a special presentation from Claire Newman, the president and CEO of the Trust for Governors Island. The city is looking to build a brand new center for climate solutions that will advance New York City's research capabilities and help us prepare for the future. And we are very excited to have an update from Claire in just a moment. And I think it's fair to say that the main event on the calendar today for land use is in Brownsville, Brooklyn, where we're going to hear about Livonia 4. This is a 4-building development that will bring nearly 500 100% permanently affordable homes to the neighborhood, including 139 apartments for seniors. Also included in the plan are a senior center, a youth recreation center with a basketball court, a youth drop-in center, public space, and a supermarket. This project could be a very important opportunity to bring affordable homes to this corner of Brooklyn. Also in Brooklyn, we're going to hear about Community Board 17's request for an updated meeting place in East Flatbush. The proposed space is an empty ground floor retail space and will help Community Board 17 better serve its community's needs. Then we're going to take a look at a couple of city council modifications. These modifications will reduce the areas that had been sent over to them. Ultimately, they will reduce the opportunity for change and, of course, the number of units of housing that could be created. We will be looking at these modifications for a determination of scope only, not on merits, but for a determination that they are within the scope of the environmental review. So we are going to get started. Ryan, I'm going to turn to you to introduce our special guest and to walk us through the agenda today.
Right, thank you. Good afternoon and welcome to the New York City Planning Commission review session. The time is 1:03 p.m. and a quorum is present. Before we begin our regular agenda, we have a presentation by Claire Newman of the Trust for Governors Island. Presentation for Claire.
Great, thanks so much, Ryan. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for having me here today. Thank you, Chair Gorodnick, for your time, and thank you to all the commissioners for your time. And special thank you to the whole team at DCP who have been working with us on this project now for countless years. So thank you for your help and the opportunity to present today. Next slide. As the chair mentioned, we're here to update you on our Climate University competition, but first we wanted to share a few words on the context in Governors Island in particular, especially for new commissioners who were not here for the presentations last year. Governors Island really is a gem of New York City Harbor. We're about 172-acre island located just a few minutes by ferry from both Manhattan and Brooklyn. We have 122 acres of open space on the island, including an award-winning 43-acre park on the southern part of the island. And we have a very unique context, 1.3 million square feet of historic buildings under roof on the northern part of the island, many of which were designed by McKim Mead White, all of which are part of a New York City landmark district. And then on the southern part of the island, we have 2 areas for new construction that were approved in a rezoning last spring. Next slide. We are employed by a 501c3 not-for-profit, the Trust for Governors Island, that was created in 2010 for the sole purpose of making sure Governors Island is an extraordinary resource for New Yorkers. Our vision for how we continue to deliver on that mission is really grounded on three key activities, three key pillars that we pursue. Of course, the first amongst those is continuing to expand and care for our incredible open space and unique surroundings. The second is arts and culture, which has been a core part of what has made Governor's Island such a successful place thus far and has helped us to draw audience from all 5 boroughs and every single zip code in the city. There's even more we can do for New York City artists and for nonprofit arts organizations from across the 5 boroughs. And then the focus of today's conversation, again, is really on this concept of creating on Governor's Island a global nexus for climate solution making. Next slide. Our idea for a Center for Climate Solutions with the city was announced in fall of 2021. The idea of the Center for Climate Solutions on Governor's Island is that we will create a cross-sector hub of educators, researchers, innovators, and advocates that are focused on demonstrating equitable climate solutions applicable right here in New York City, but that have the potential to scale to urban environments around the world. And our 3 core goals in thinking through this project are about, again, helping cities be ready for climate change, to be built more sustainably and be more adaptable, to grow well-paying jobs for New York, and to capture a big part of the green economy that will be growing across the country, and to create a space for public awareness and dialogue that meshes with Governor's Island as a public destination and resource. Next slide. We began this project by focusing on the core anchor component, which is driven by a research and educational anchor. But surrounding that, we envision having dorm and faculty housing, space for small scale convening and hospitality, space for job creation in the form of commercial labs and offices, and all embedded again in the public space that is Governor's Island, creating a hands-on living laboratory that will be accessible for educational opportunities and for nonprofits to advance their own work as well. Next slide. As I mentioned, we started work towards this vision a number of years ago, but we in the past months have made significant progress. So in May of 2021, this body approved a rezoning for the southern part of the island, followed by the City Council. We, in June of that year, released an RFEI calling on universities and nonprofit research institutions from around the globe to throw their hat into the ring and express how they would be able to build and program a one-of-a-kind space on Governor's Island. As part of that, the city provided $150 million in capital dollars to support the project, and the project was announced on Governor's Island by Mayor de Blasio and Senator Schumer. In September, we received 12 responses to that RFEI that represented over 30 universities from around the globe. And in December of last year, we announced 4 finalists. We picked the best 4 of those 12 responses to move forward in the project. Next slide. Those finalist teams, as you can see here, are the Climate Center Consortium, co-led by CUNY and the New School, the MIT Governor's Island Center for Climate Solutions, led by MIT, the Coastal Cities Impact Team, led by Northeastern, and the New York Climate Exchange, led by Stony Brook University. As you can see here, all teams had a number of partners, academic and otherwise, on their teams, and we expect that that will expand even more in this next round of the competition. Next slide. These 4 teams, as I said, were the sort of best of the 12 and were evaluated carefully by a selection committee. All of them really leaned into this idea of leveraging Governor's Island as a public space where we could convene activity that authentically took input from New Yorkers and are really driven towards solutions that can immediately have an impact in a positive way on New York City communities. Next slide. Most immediately, last month, we released the second and final part of the competition, an RFP that is only able to be responded to by those 4 finalist teams. The 4 finalist teams, as part of this process, have the opportunity to add additional university partners and other partners as necessary, and really to refine what they were doing in the last round of submission. In July, responses to the RFP will be due. In the fall, we are planning a robust series of community engagement programs around those 4 responses. And then our goal is to select and announce a winner of this in early 2023. Next slide. This RFP is really one step further on the heels of the RFEI that went out last June. And it reflects, first of all, additional research that we've done on these topic areas and that really have guided the trust and other planning partners in the city for the past couple of years. Second, the RFP reflects learnings from the RFEI stage. And so we were able to evaluate the 12 responses and help use those responses to help inform this RFP process. And then third, the RFP reflects many months of community engagement, particularly focused through our Community Advisory Council. And so as you can see here, we talk in much greater detail and ask for quite a bit more information on the programmatic components of the Climate Solutions Center. We're looking for an interdisciplinary effort that especially is centered on urban adaptation, on public policy, and on the integration with public health. We're looking for a proposal that integrates at all levels, a focus on racial equity, environmental and climate justice. We're looking for projects that have immediate commercialization potential, again, with the idea that we want this to have a positive impact on urban environments now, and ones that really use the island as a living laboratory. And then, of course, equally important is the access to opportunity that provides for New York job seekers, for New York City students, for island partners. We have here the Harbor School that has been in conversations with all of these different teams, Earth Matter, Billion Oyster Project, et cetera, et cetera. So many partners working on the island today in these issue areas that can form partnerships with the respondents. And of course, as I mentioned, for folks from across the 5 boroughs. Next slide. We've also further developed what we're looking for in terms of the physical plant. In this RFP, we've laid out a lot more detail about what a phase 1 needs to look like. And we have also asked respondents to provide us as much information as possible on that phase 1 so that we know we end up with an immediately actionable project and that we can talk to elected officials, to community partners, to folks from across the city about what's really going to be delivered by this university partner. So the phase 1, as we've laid it out in the RFP, must be located within the green areas that you see here. The big green box is parcel E2 that folks may remember from the rezoning, is a photo of it here as well. Next slide. And this is a snapshot of some of the historic buildings that we've included as part of the phase 1 offering. We've expressed very clearly in the RFP that we strongly encourage and would give priority to projects that include both new construction and adaptive reuse opportunities, with the idea of really creating a center of gravity around Yankee Pier as a major destination for the island and a major point of entry to the climate center. Next slide. In terms of design and planning considerations, obviously this has been an enormous focus of our work in general, and especially our work with DCP. We're really looking for respondents in this phase to show us real ambitious architecture that is one of a kind, that reflects the context of Governor's Island, and there's really boundary breaking in terms of the principles of sustainability and resiliency that are proposed as part of the design. And as you can see here, quite a lot of detail has gone into this RFP and parameters are put in place. So we have a robust set of design guidelines that we worked on with DCP and the Community Advisory Council. Of course, we have the deed from the federal government that lists required and precluded uses for the island, the zoning resolution itself. Within the historic district, we have landmark and SHPO review. And then there are additional development commitments that were made during ULURP that are conveyed in the RFP. And of course, we're asking folks to set very ambitious goals around MWBE participation for both design and construction portions of the project, in addition to the ongoing programming. Next slide. Once we have the responses, again, this summer, we'll be leading a selection process. We have partners from across the city who are part of that selection committee, including DCP, the Mayor's Office of Equity, and the Mayor's Office of Climate and Environmental Justice. We'll also be seeking, as part of this phase of the project, something new that was not a part of the RFP, which is input from a formal outside advisory committee. They're not providing selection inputs, but they are helping to advise the committee on strengths, weaknesses, opportunities that are associated with this proposal. And that advisory committee has been announced. It's formed of experts in the fields of climate science, environmental justice, environmental policy, philanthropy, and business. Next slide. And then, of course, to enable the review and the public engagement, we're also seeking, as I mentioned, both significant detail around the programming, but also around the design itself. So especially for the phase one, we're asking for detailed design drawings and enough of the aesthetics that we can go out and explain to people what this thing is going to look like, as well as an implementation plan so we can truly gauge feasibility. For additional potential future phases, we're looking for conceptual level of design, once again, to help guide the selection and input process. Next slide. And then finally, looking forward, as I mentioned, responses will be due this summer. In the fall, we'll be undergoing public engagement with the goal of making a selection early next year. So I'll stop there. Thank you again for the opportunity, and I'd love to take any questions at this time.
Thank you, Claire. We appreciate the presentation, and it is good to see you. Thank you for everything you are doing to bring this all to fruition. We're really excited about what this will mean for Governor's Island and also for the city. I wanted to just pose a couple of really basic questions to you. I just ask if you could help us put into more plain English a couple of the things that were on the slides. So in the academic program slide, it noted an interdisciplinary effort focused on adaptation, urban environments, public policy, and public health. You know, without specifying what might be in any one, proposal or another, what is the idea? Like, what is the thing that, is the goal here in language that, somebody who is just hearing this for the first time might say, oh, that's an interesting concept.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think, without cribbing the mayor too much, I think a lot of this project is really focused on getting stuff done. And when we went out and did our research, we heard a lot. The science is in place. And for the first time, if you think about sort of the climate field as a triangle where you have pure research, mitigation, i.e. Reducing our carbon output, and then adaptation, thinking about how we actually change our cities so that we're ready for everything that's going to happen with climate change, whether that be extreme heat, air quality, major storms, sea level rise, that we're thinking now about how we can adapt and be prepared for that, particularly for our most vulnerable communities. And so I'm coming back to your point, but those two major focus areas of interdisciplinary are really about putting that science into action. And so bringing policy and advocacy and research into a single field that thinks about how can we change laws, how can we change policies, how can we actually create products that are going to get us to those goals. And then the second part about commercialization in urban environments is, again, let's move away, or let's not emphasize at the center the pure research, and rather think about how do we get buildings in the city retrofitted so they are putting out less carbon more rapidly? How do we add resiliency to the buildings that are already here and in differing neighborhoods from across the city? So hopefully that helps explain a little bit.
It does. And from an academic perspective, as requested in the RFP, does it define specifically the level of degree that would need to be afforded for this, or is there some flexibility, or how is that defined in the RFP?
Yeah, there's some flexibility there. So, and this is a little bit too of some of the lessons we learned in research we did about precedent projects in the city, including applied sciences. We really want this to be, as I said, a sort of interdisciplinary approach, and one where we're letting universities and their partners who have the expertise in this area suggest to us what the right approach is to achieve those goals. And so we haven't been prescriptive in this RFP and said, you must have at least 800 graduate students, for example. Rather, we're saying, given your expertise and everything that you understand about the city's goals, how would you approach this problem?
Okay, and before I go to the rest of the commission, give us some examples of what you think of when you think of using the island as a living laboratory for experimentation and public engagement.
Yeah, thank you. And actually that's an area where we have also made some progress. We've been out looking for grants to help support that work as something that we can start right now. And so the trust is going to be, in the coming weeks and months, really beginning to launch that work. But we have on the island, as I said, 172 acres. We have 2.5 miles of waterfront, and we have 1.3 million square feet of existing buildings. And so our goal here is really to use the island as a bed of experimentation, particularly for scaling New York businesses and for nonprofits to do programming and to pilot new technologies. And we've had some examples of this already. We had a partner come out and put into our surrounding waters this biophilic floating mass that aims to clean the water underneath it. We've had folks put in place sensors on the island that can look at the impact of ambient noise on bird habitat and bird migration. But the possibilities honestly are sort of endless. Like, it would be such a great place to display the latest and greatest carbon capture technology. It would be we could do such a better job at even just making it transparent to the public, all the fantastic resiliency tools that went into the new 43-acre park we have around water management. And so part of it is about providing the place for these pilots to happen. And then part of it is making what's happening on the island totally transparent. Even if you're just out for a bike ride, right? You can walk by one of these things and learn something more about maybe even an activity you could take back to your own neighborhood and home.
Last question for me. This is for phase one, as you described it. Is your expectation that you would designate, through the process that you described, pick the team, let them move forward, and then at some point later on to decide what would be the best route for future phases? Or is that something that you would think to move on sooner than the completion of phase one, for example?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, this one is really focused on the university and research component. And so we hope to both secure their phase one and then potentially future options. I think what we would look to do is, once we've made that, and as the university partner has started and is on their way, we can do an assessment of, when we think about the big climate center plan, what components are we missing, or what's the next critical thing to come next? And so we could go back out to a public process for whatever those missing links are. But we don't have the timeline totally hammered out, but I don't think that would need to wait for phase one to be completed, just for us to fully understand and make sure that we're on the pathway to delivering on that first research and educational component.
Okay, got it. Okay, great. Let me see if there are questions from commissioners here for you, Claire. But thank you. We appreciate your presentation here and all of your work, and look forward to seeing the results and the success of all of this. Okay. All right. I do not see other questions for you. So thank you for coming. Good to see you, and best of luck. We'll look forward to staying. Goodrich. I did not see your hand.
I raised it
late.
Sorry,
I didn't see it. Go ahead. We got you. Go ahead.
I was just wondering, for the purpose of building on the island, is it to because I know going on the island is, I actually go to Governor's Island frequently, like literally every other weekend. Is it to stimulate more money to pay for the island, or is it just, is it another issue, or I'm curious.
Totally, it's a great question. I think honestly, the original driver of all this, even setting aside the Climate Solutions Center plan, is that the island, dating way back to the federal transfer and talking about it in 2003, was always meant to be a 24/7 mixed use place. And we began that journey by creating public space by actually opening the island to the public for the first time. Like I grew up in New York. I had never heard of Governor's Island. And then it was only in the last 10 years that people started being able to go out there. Longer than that, but practically. And so we built a park and we did all this public attraction with the idea that we always wanted to see these historic buildings adaptively reused. We always wanted to see new construction on the southern part of the island to support this idea of a dynamic public environment that's as fabulous. Like, you come out every other weekend. It's so amazing here on a June Saturday. It can be that amazing on like a Tuesday in February. Maybe not quite that amazing, but it can be a resource for New Yorkers year round. And so really the 24/7 activity and delivering on the promise of what this place can offer New York City was impetus one. And then absolutely financial resources is a huge part of it as well. That Governor's Island needs money to be able to operate. You've been there, like all that stuff that enables public access, the ferry, the security, the EMT, we pay for all that. Every time a roof leaks, we fix it. Every time a water line breaks, we're the folks who have to go out and repair it. And so having financial resources to support those uses and public activity and put back into our programming is equally critical to that vision of a dynamic 365 public resource.
And what I actually, silly enough, I thought the little teepees paid for, but no. And what about the additional, and there will be a lot of additional foot traffic with a university there. How will that impact the park element, the fact that it's supposed to be an open space, just like another park?
Yeah, it's a great question. We, as part of the rezoning in the EIS, we've done a few now really dating back to the original transfer. But what's interesting about, just on a practical level, how that'll all play out is right now we are at our busiest on summer weekends. Like a summer Saturday, we'll have 15,000 people on the island. But during the week, we have 1,000 or 2,000 people. So it happens to be the case that the sort of foot traffic and other traffic that the climate center will drive is at the non-popular times. So we don't, from the point of view of a member of the public who's visiting the island, if anything, we think it will be better because we'll be able to realize the additional phases of the park space that we haven't been able to afford to date. We'll be able to create new open spaces that run through the areas that are currently fenced off. We'll have programming and services in those historic buildings that are currently, we're doing everything we can to keep them upright and in good condition. But from, again, the sort of traffic, pedestrian, bike management point of view, the capacity on the island is there for the level of activity that this is supposed to generate.
So last question, so I see, so it's really that the universities, the thinking behind it is the university students would really just be there, but not during the summer months because they would be off, and then the summer months are when most.
Yeah, and there will certainly be some overlap on that, right? Like I don't want to pretend that they're all going to be gone, but it, the waviness of the intensity of uses is complementary.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Commissioner Goodrich. Looking for other questions. Okay. Now I think that may be a clear. Thank you very much.
Thank you all for having me.
Of course. We'll see you again soon.
Okay, bye.
Ryan, we're going to go to some of our Brooklyn items today. So let's start there.
The first item on our agenda is a certification of a UDAP designation and disposition of city-owned property, urban renewal plan amendment, and zoning map and zoning text amendments in Brooklyn Community District 16. Making his first presentation to the City Planning Commission is Juki Tsai. Juki?
Thanks, Ryan. Good afternoon, Chair Gorodnick and commissioners. Next slide, please. This is an application by the Department of Housing Preservation and Development, HPD, for a UDAP and disposition, an urban renewal plan amendment, and a zoning map amendment, and a zoning text amendment, all to facilitate 4 new 100% affordable 11 and 12-story mixed-use buildings, totaling 430,000 square feet with approximately 498 dwelling units. This application has 2 project areas located along Livonia Avenue in the Brownsville neighborhood of Brooklyn, Community District 16. Next slide. Livonia 4 is part of HPD's 2017 Brownsville Plan, which was a community-based planning process to develop the shared vision and plan for the future of Brownsville. In coordination with the release of the Brownsville Plan, HPD issued the Brownsville RFP to develop several large, vacant, city-owned sites within Brownsville, each focusing on a specific theme to address community goals. The theme of Livonia 4 is healthy living and food systems. In addition to Livonia 4, the Brownsville Plan identified 2 other sites to be developed. The first was Glenmore Manor. The commission approved a rezoning for it in 2021. The other is Rockaway Chester, which is yet to come. Next slide. The proposed developments at site C1, C2, C3, and C4 are 4 new buildings containing approximately 430,000 square feet of floor area. This includes residential floor area, commercial retail floor area, community facility, and community facility with sleeping accommodations. This includes 498 affordable apartments and 15 parking spaces. Next slide. Livonia 4 consists of 4 development sites within 2 project areas on Livonia Avenue along the elevated 3-train line. Project Area 1 is generally bounded by Livonia Avenue to the north, Powell Street to the east, Riverdale Avenue to the south, and Mother Gaston Boulevard to the west. Development sites C1, C2, and C3 are located within Project Area 1. Project Area 2 sits approximately 5 blocks to the west, and these are pretty long blocks. It is generally bounded by Livonia Avenue to the north, Thomas Boylan Street to the east, Riverdale Avenue to the south, and Amboy Street to the west. Development site C4 sits within Project Area 2. The surrounding area is primarily residential. To the north are NYCHA's Van Dyke houses, Tilden houses, and Brownsville houses, built around the 1950s and 60s. To the south are the Nehemiah homes, built in the 1980s. To the east, across the elevated L train tracks, are the Livonia apartments, built after the 2013 Livonia Commons rezoning. To the west is Marcus Garvey Village, which was subject to the 2018 Marcus Garvey Village rezoning and has since seen new residential construction. The major commercial corridor serving the area runs along Pitkin Avenue, which runs parallel to Livonia Avenue, approximately 4 or 5 blocks to the north. It is out of the frame here. There are also clusters of commercial retail along Rockaway Avenue, where it intersects with Pitkin, and along Mother Gaston Boulevard, where it intersects with Pitkin Avenue. The area is well served by public transportation. The 3-train, running along Livonia Avenue, stops at Saratoga Avenue, Rockaway Avenue, and Junius Street. The L train stops at Livonia Avenue and Van Sinderen. The B14 bus, which connects Crown Heights, Brownsville, and East New York, stops at Mother Gaston Boulevard and Dumont Avenue. The B60, which connects Canarsie, Brownsville, Ocean Hill, Bushwick, and Williamsburg, stops at Rockaway Avenue and Dumont Avenue. A portion of the 100-acre East New York Industrial Business Zone sits to the east of Project Area 1. It is home to more than 3,000 jobs, and you can see it in that light purple shading. Next slide. The lots in Project Area 1 are zoned R6 with a C24 overlay. The primary zoning district map within the surrounding areas is R6. There are a variety of land uses surrounding Project Area 1. To the north are 3 tower in the park style NYCHA developments, large residential buildings shown on this map in the yellow area. To the south are 2-story Nehemiah homes, single-family residential buildings shown on this map in beige. To the east are low-rise warehouses and open parking lot. This is transportation and utility uses that is part of an M11 zoning district. And again, that's shown here in light purple. To the west is Nehemiah Park, open space shown on this map in green. Next slide. The lots in project area 2 are zoned R6. The primary zoning district map within the surrounding areas is also R6. 3 blocks to the west is a C23 commercial overlay along Livonia Avenue, beginning at Strauss Street. An R72 district mapped with mandatory inclusionary housing is located directly east of project area 2. This was mapped as part of the 2018 Marcus Garvey Village rezoning. There are a variety of land uses in the area surrounding project area 2. To the north is Betsy Head Park, open space area shown on this map in green. To the south, east, and west are 1 and 2 family, as well as multifamily residential buildings, shown here in light yellow and beige. To the west, there's also vacant land shown on this map in gray. Next slide. Project Area 1 consists of 20 tax lots with a total lot area of approximately 80,000 square feet. It is mostly vacant-owned land, mostly vacant city-owned lots. However, there are also some privately owned sites. Development Site C1 is a 40,400 square foot zoning lot. It is currently vacant land owned primarily by the city. Development Site C2 is a 9,150 square foot zoning lot made up of vacant city-owned tax lots. Development Site C3 is an 18,500 square foot zoning lot made up primarily of vacant city-owned tax lots and 1 privately owned tax lot that was recently acquired by the planned developer. Next slide. Moving into photos of Project Area 1. The orange line here designates the project area, and the blue dashed line designates the development site. This photo faces southwest from Livonia Avenue towards development site C1, and you can see a locator map in the upper right-hand corner. Next slide. This photo faces northeast from Sackman Street towards development site C1. Next slide. This photo faces southwest from Livonia Avenue. To the right of the frame is development site C2, which you can see with that blue dashed line. This photo shows Tabernacle Baptist Church, a lot that is not owned by the applicant, but falls within the project area to be rezoned. This is known as an outparcel. Next slide. This photo faces southeast from Livonia Avenue towards development site C2. This photo shows 2 existing residential buildings, outparcels within project area 1. Next slide. This photo faces southwest from Livonia Avenue towards development site C3. Next slide. This photo faces east from Mother Gaston Boulevard towards development site C3. This shows an existing commercial building, which is an outparcel in project area 1. Next slide. Project area 2 consists of 7 tax lots with a total lot area of approximately 20,000 square feet. Project area 2 consists of vacant city-owned lots, privately owned lots, and the Thomas Boyland Community Garden. Development site C4 is a 10,000 square foot zoning lot on a vacant city-owned tax lot. Next slide. This photo faces southwest from Livonia Avenue and Amboy Street towards development site C4. Next slide. Moving on to our proposed developments. This rendering faces southwest from Livonia Avenue, looking from under the elevated subway tracks at the proposed development at site C1. The proposed development is a 12-story mixed-use building that would contain approximately 207,000 square feet of floor area with an FAR of 5.15. This includes 225 multifamily affordable rental units, an 8,700 square foot supermarket, and 4,000 square feet of local retail. Site C1 would be constructed with varying heights. It would be set back approximately 15 feet from Livonia Avenue, allowing natural light to reach the street level, before rising to a height of 75 feet. Above 75 feet, the building would set back 15 feet before rising to a final height of 130 feet. Site C1 would include an underground parking garage with approximately 15 parking spaces associated with the building's commercial uses. They would be accessible via a proposed curb cut on Sackman Street. Next slide. The commercial and community facility uses would be accessible on the ground floor from Livonia Avenue. The main residential entrance would be located on Sackman Street. At this time, the community facility space is anticipated to include an approximately 13,000 square foot rooftop garden with a greenhouse. Building amenities include a mailroom, community room, laundry room, bike room, and a landscape terrace accessible to residents. Next slide. This aerial rendering faces southeast from Livonia Avenue, looking at Site C2. The proposed development is an 11-story building that would contain approximately 53,000 square feet of floor area with an FAR of 5.84. This includes 80 supportive housing units. And on the ground floor, a 4,800 square feet of community facility area. Site C2 would set back approximately 6 feet from Livonia Avenue before rising to a height of 75 feet. Above 75 feet, the building would set back 9 feet before rising to a final height of 115 feet. Next slide. The main entrance for building residents and visitors to the community facility space would be located on Livonia Avenue. Building amenities include a mailroom, community room, laundry room, bike storage room, and a landscape terrace accessible to residents. No parking spaces would be provided at the proposed development. Next slide. This rendering faces southwest from the north side of Livonia at Site C3. The proposed development is a 12-story mixed-use building that would contain approximately 104,000 square feet of floor area with an FAR of 5.61. This would include approximately 139 senior housing units, 1,600 square feet of local retail on the ground floor, and a 9,700 square foot senior center, also on the ground floor. The proposed development at Site C3 would set back 5 feet from Livonia Avenue before rising to a height of 75 feet. Above 75 feet, the building would set back 13 feet before rising to a final height of 125 feet. Next slide. The main residential entrance would be located on Mother Gaston Boulevard, while retail and community facility spaces would be accessible from Livonia Avenue. During the ULURP process, HPD will work with a team of architects and designers to do community outreach to determine the best design and use of the proposed landscape activity space at the corner of Mother Gaston Boulevard and Livonia Avenue in the upper right-hand corner here. Building amenities include a mailroom, community room, laundry room, bike storage room, and a landscape terrace accessible to residents. There will be no parking spaces provided. Next slide. This aerial rendering faces southwest from Livonia Avenue and Amboy Street at Site C4, which is in Project Area 2. The proposed development is a 12-story mixed-use building that would contain approximately 65,000 square feet of floor area with an FAR of 6.49. This would include approximately 54 affordable units and a 19,000 square foot youth recreation facility on the ground floor. The proposed building would set back 5 feet from Livonia Avenue before rising to a height of 75 feet. Above 75 feet, the building would set back 15 feet before rising to a final height of 129 feet. Next slide. The main entrances for building residents and visitors to the community facility space would be located on Livonia Avenue. Building amenities would include a mailroom, community room, laundry room, bike room, and a landscape terrace accessible to residents. And no parking spaces would be provided. Next slide. HPD proposes 4 actions to facilitate the proposed developments. First, an urban development action area designation, project approval, and disposition of city-owned property, known as a UDAP. Second, an urban renewal plan amendment to change the urban renewal area land use designation from commercial to residential. Third, a zoning map amendment. And fourth, a zoning text amendment to map an MIH area. Next slide. The first action the applicant proposes is an urban development action area project designation and disposition of city-owned property for 15 tax lots on 4 blocks within Project Area 1 and Project Area 2. You can see those lots listed here on the slide. Next slide. The second action the applicant proposes is an urban renewal plan amendment action to change the land use designation of urban renewal area sites 140, 141, and 142 from commercial to residential use. These sites fall within Project Area 1. This would allow residential use in addition to commercial use pursuant to zoning on these sites. Next slide. The third action the applicant proposes is a zoning map amendment. This slide shows the proposed change in Project Area 1 from R6 C24 to an R7 to an, R72 C24 district. Next slide. In Project Area 2, the applicant proposes a zoning map amendment from R6 to R72 C24. This would extend the nearby R72 C24 district, which was approved by the Commission in 2018 for the Marcus Garvey Village rezoning. Next slide. The R6 district is a medium density apartment building district. It results in 7 to 14 story apartment buildings. It is mapped all over the city and can result in a wide variety of building types, from tower in the park style buildings to 6 to 8 story apartments. And you can see some of the specifics listed on the left-hand side. Next slide. The R72 zoning district is a quintessential New York City apartment building district. It results in 10 to 13 story apartment buildings. It is especially appropriate along Livonia Avenue, where the flexible regulations allow a setback from the elevated train. When paired with MIH, it has a base height of 40 to 75 feet and a maximum building height of 135 feet. C24 districts are commercial districts mapped as overlays within residential districts. C24 districts allow a range of local serving retail and service uses. Commercial uses have a maximum FAR of 2.0. Next slide. The fourth action the applicant proposes is a zoning text amendment to map an MIH area over Project Area 1 and Project Area 2. This is according to MIH Option 1 and MIH Option 2. Next slide. In summary, this is an application by HPD for 4 land use actions to facilitate 4 new 100% affordable 11 and 12 story mixed use buildings totaling 430,000 square feet with 498 dwelling units in Brownsville, Community District 16, Brooklyn. Thank you. This concludes my presentation, and I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Juki. Excellent work. We really appreciate it. Let me just pose a few questions to you to get the ball rolling over here. First, on site C3, you noted that there was some landscaped activity space. That is, just want to confirm, that is for the public as opposed to for the residents of the buildings?
Yes, my understanding is that it's for the public, and the intent is to really activate that Livonia Avenue corridor for just a pleasant pedestrian experience. And then, of course, for residents who want to spend time there as well. Great.
And then on the disposition of the 15 tax lots, this is entirely being developed, all of the 4 buildings that you described over the 2 areas, it's all being developed on lots that are being sought to be disposed of here through this action. Is that right?
Yeah, for the most part, yes. There's in site C3, 1 privately owned lot that was acquired by Catholic Charities that I mentioned. But the intent of all of the disposition of these properties is for the building of these development sites. Does that make sense?
I see. And yeah, it does. And so that 1 lot that was acquired by Catholic Charities, is that lot part of the, is that an out parcel, or is that actually one of the lot? Does that become one of the buildings here as anticipated?
That becomes one of the buildings. The site is sort of that L-shaped building, and it's one of the kind of end lots there that will allow for the building to be built.
Okay. Last question for me. You noted, I think, at least for 3, maybe even for all of the buildings, that they rise 75 feet before they set back.
Yeah.
Is that true for all 4, or was it only true for 1, 2, and 4? Was question 1.
Okay.
And as you sort out the answer to that question, can you just connect the setback here and how that relates to the elevated train line? What the 75 feet means as it relates to the elevated?
Great question. Thanks, Chair Gorodnick. Yes, I believe all 4 are set back after 75 feet. And the intent is for that setback to mitigate a little bit of the noise coming off that elevated train line. And that's my understanding of why that setback is occurring. And
All right.
before we move on, I just wanted to point out one slight piece of information. I believe you earlier mentioned a youth drop-in facility. I may earlier have mistakenly told you that that space was a drop-in facility, but it's actually a to be planned community facility space. And I just wanted to note that. So apologies if I.
That's okay. So it's less specified, but it is community space.
And that was responding to community requests for I believe it was the community did not necessarily want that space to be programmed as such. So it's to be planned and that'll be factored in.
Okay, understood. Thank you. Let me see if there are questions from commissioners here. I will note that this is in a second, I'm going to go to Commissioner Levin. I will note that this is the start of the process here. This is for those watching for the first time, this is for certification. So we will be kicking off the formal land use process here in ULURP with certification today. And then we will again see this when it comes to us for public hearing. Commissioner Levin, floor is yours.
Thank you. First, Juki, welcome to our work here. You made a great presentation. It's great to have a new face and hope you have a great career. Just to pick up on the community facility discussion you just had with the chair. So is there not currently an operator selected for that facility?
My understanding is that HPD and the applicants are exploring the potential operators and tenants. And that's just going to be going on as during the ULURP process.
Okay, so no name to attach to the site yet.
Not quite yet.
Okay.
Not officially.
Okay. Well, so maybe unofficially we'll find out by the time it comes back.
Yes.
My real question was about affordability. Chair Gorodnick mentioned at the beginning of the meeting that these are 100% permanently affordable projects. And of course, MIH provides permanence for the units that are built, pursuant to the requirements of MIH. Can you tell us how affordability will be secured for the remaining units?
Yes. Oh, thank you, Commissioner Levin. So with that, I would actually, so I know, yes, as you mentioned, MIH secures the permanent affordability for that floor area. HPD, the financing they worked out. I would actually punt them on the explanation and actually would say, I believe the nature is such that the financing encourages permanent affordability, but before committing to that position fully, I would check with them on that, the nature of that financing.
Okay, but the intention is to get as close to permanence as possible.
That's my
right?
understanding.
Okay, which I would note is really a great development for city-owned sites. In the last, the time I've been on the commission, there have been a number of sites, city-owned sites, where the city was not pressing to have 100% affordability on city-owned sites, which has always been a concern of mine and of many folks in the community. So it's great to see these ones going out at a target of 100% affordability. Thanks for that.
Thank you, Commissioner Levin. Commissioner Burney.
Oh, thank you. Juki, just to expand a little bit on Commissioner Levin's question, it would be interesting to know just what are the income bands that are being targeted by the affordability and how that compares with not only AMI in the city in general, but AMI in the neighborhood and AMI in Brooklyn. And we normally get such a report with HPD projects. So hopefully they can come back with that when it comes back to us.
Commissioner Burney, would you like my understanding of the breakdown of the income bands currently?
Oh, if you have it, yes, it would be helpful.
So I can just say, and this is subject to change, and this is in some of the presentations that the developers have provided.
Mm-hmm.
My understanding is that there's some units set aside for formerly homeless folks, and that's about roughly 9% of the units. roughly 16% at 30% AMI, and that's about 80 units. Roughly, again, 8 or 9% at 40% AMI. About 39% of the units at 50% AMI. About 11% at 70% AMI, and 17% at 80% AMI. And again, those are proposed, and but just in some of the presentations that have been at the community board and what has been shared.
Okay, okay. So that's actually quite low. I'm wondering whether there isn't some argument there about providing slightly higher to develop more of a mixed income development, because a very high concentration of very low income bands in that particular neighborhood. So I don't know whether they're considering that, but that might be a topic to think about. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Burney. Other questions, comments? Commissioner Rampersad?
Yes, thank you for the presentation and welcome to
Thank
city
you.
planning. I just had one question. The income questions I had were asked and answered. On project or site C1, I see there's a 15-foot setback.
Yeah.
So what is going to be happening on the ground floor of that setback area?
So as you can see in kind of the ground floor plan there's the grocery store and I believe local retail. And that setback, I think, is really intended to provide a pleasant pedestrian experience. And as you know, the elevated train line is right there. So the intent and the lot size, I believe here really permits it, is to set back to allow light to really reach that ground floor level there. So you can kind of see the area outside the grocery store and the retail. Again, that setback just allowing for a sort of well lit, especially the natural light coming through in the day area outside those two stores.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if they're going to provide landscape. I know it was early in the process, but I wasn't sure if they're providing landscaping or what it was going to look like. Because the other setbacks are 5 feet on the other sites. So, okay.
Yuki, are those stairways to the subway?
So I was going to
that image, please.
Ryan, that's a great point. I was going to say, if you walk those blocks, that area, the sidewalks as they are now are quite narrow. And especially if you're going to have a larger kind of grocery store and retail facility, having a little bit of area in front of it, I guess, especially given the elevated train line, I think is part of the intent there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Rampersad. Okay. Commissioner Burney, I still see your hand raised, but I think that's a relic from before. Okay, so I see it is. Any other questions from the commission? Okay, seeing none. Juki, again, thank you very much for a first one. That was excellent. We're glad to have you. So congrats.
Thanks, Chair.
And this item is now certified. We will now move on to our Brooklyn pre-hearing. Ryan.
Yes, the third item on our agenda is a pre-hearing review of the second item on our agenda is a pre-hearing review of a notice of intent to acquire office space in Brooklyn Community District 17. Also making her first presentation to the commission is Lucia Cappuccio. Sorry, Lucia.
Capuccio, you're close.
Capuccio.
Good afternoon, Chair Garodnick and commissioners. Next slide, please. This is a pre-hearing for a 195 office space application by the Department of Citywide Administrative Services and Brooklyn Community Board 17 for the acquisition of office space for the use of property located at 350 Clarkson Avenue in East Flatbush, Brooklyn Community District 17. Next slide, please. So the proposed project area is located on Clarkson Avenue, which is between Nostrand and New York Avenues. It is well served by public transit and is located within 2 blocks of the Winthrop Street subway station, which is served by the 2 and 5 trains. The B44 bus connecting Williamsburg to Sheepshead Bay and the B12 bus connecting Lefferts Gardens to East New York run on Nostrand and New York Avenues, respectively. Notably, the proposed project site is also located 1 block away from SUNY Downstate Medical Center, which is indicated here in orange, where CB17 holds its larger public hearings. Next slide, please. This is an aerial view of the proposed project area, which is outlined in blue. The project site is an 8-story mixed-use building with ground floor commercial space. Next slide, please. This is a zoning map showing the proposed project site is located in an R7A C24 district. R7A districts typically produce high lot coverage 7 to 9-story buildings. The surrounding zoning includes the residential districts of R71, R6, and R5 with some commercial overlays and 2 small M11 districts located to the north of the project site. Next slide, please. This is an area map showing the proposed project site as outlined in red. It's located in the northwestern corner of CD17 in a mainly residential and commercial area. This site is within a few blocks of the Nostrand Avenue and Church Avenue commercial corridors. It was rezoned from an M11 district to an R7A C24 district in an application approved by the City Planning Commission in March 2009 to facilitate 3 attached mixed-use buildings, one of which is now the proposed project site. The surrounding project area comprises a range of uses, including residential, which is shown here in yellow, orange, and brown, commercial, shown in red, community facility, shown in light blue, and industrial, which is shown in light purple. Within a few blocks of the project site, there's a mix of 1 and 2 family homes, medium density row houses, and multifamily apartment buildings, which range in height from 6 to 16 stories. Next slide, please. The current CB17 district office is located at 4112 Farragut Road in the southeast corner of the district. The approximately 2,000 square foot office space acquisition was approved by the City Planning Commission in May 2014. Based on information from CB17 staff, however, the space is no longer suitable for long-term occupancy. Staff have reported issues with the sewage trap, which is located inside the office, that emits a strong odor and floods during heavy rainfall events. These issues have consistently disrupted the day-to-day operation of the office. Repeated attempts to repair the building to address these issues have not been successful. Next slide, please. The new proposed office site is located in a privately owned, recently constructed 225,000 square foot mixed-use residential and commercial development. It is 8 stories tall and contains 250 residential units with ground floor commercial space. The ground floor of the building fronts on Clarkson Avenue and includes currently unleased commercial space. The site is bounded by Clarkson Avenue to the north, New York Avenue to the east, Nostrand Avenue to the west, and Lenox Road to the south. There are no curb cuts along the building's frontage. And it should be noted that according to DCAS, the proposed office space lease would be for 20 years with a 5-year renewable option. Next slide, please. So this is an illustrative ground floor plan of the proposed office space provided by DCAS. The space is approximately 1,724 square feet and is located on the ground floor. The office entrance to the building will be ADA accessible and will have exterior signage for CB17. There will be no parking allocated to CB17 staff or visitors. So the new office space will consist of a reception area, conference room, and guest restroom. The conference room will be outfitted with top-of-the-line AV capabilities to facilitate remote meetings and presentations. A separate employee area to the rear of the space will consist of an open layout with 4 workstations, a pantry, an employee restroom, filing space, and storage closets. The office is generally open Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. In addition to 4 full-time staff members, the board's chairpersons and community board members utilize the office space on an as-needed basis. The site is adequate for current and anticipated staffing levels. The site will be utilized to perform the charter mandated functions of the community board. Next slide, please. In summary, the requested action, notice of intent to acquire office space, was submitted by DCAS and CB17 pursuant to Section 195 of the New York City Charter to make use of the property located at 350 Clarkson Avenue, relocating Community Board 17 offices from their existing location at 4112 Farragut Road. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Lucia. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. We've got some great first timers. We love it. This feels pretty straightforward to me. I'm going to see if there are questions from the commission. There are none. So you got it all. Thank you very much for that. We appreciate it.
Great. Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, Ryan, we're going to send this one to a public hearing for this Wednesday, May 25th. Ryan, what's up next?
Third item on our agenda is a pre-hearing review of an amendment to the rules of the City of New York pursuant to the City Administrative Procedure Act. People were wondering what CAPA stood for. Ezra Moser is here to present. Ezra?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Next slide, please. So the requested action is to update the theater subdistrict fund's contribution rate by amending the New York City rules via the Citywide Administrative Procedure Act, also known as CAPA. Section 81744 in the special Midtown District text allows what are called listed theaters to transfer their unused floor area to receiving sites district-wide, and those transfers are subject to a per square foot contribution to the theater subdistrict fund. So the map that you see here on the right, that just generally depicts the theater subdistrict and its environs, as well as its various sub areas. It's generally bounded by 8th Avenue to the west, 6th Avenue to the east, 57th Street to the north, and 40th Street to the south. You can see there's a gray sub area within it, which is called the theater subdistrict core. It kind of includes the greatest concentration and cluster of listed theaters. And then there's an 8th Avenue corridor, which you can see in blue, which is more of a transitional zone and has special bulk regulations. So what we're doing here, this application is adjusting the contribution rate from $17.60 per square foot to $24.65 per square foot. So if this all seems pretty familiar, it's because it was presented to the CPC on April 11th for the equivalent of referral. Following that presentation, DCP published it in the city record on April 22nd for a mandatory 30-day notice period and notice and comment period. And so it's now returning for a CPC public hearing on May 25th. So during the comment period where it was noticed in the city record, no comments were received. But we do anticipate comments to be submitted to the commission by community boards 4 and 5, as well as the borough president. Also noting that in the case of these CAPA type applications, the testimony submission period ends at end of day on the day of hearing, so on the 25th. Next slide, please. So in terms of timeline, we're currently at the red highlighted stage, more or less. Technically, this is pre-hearing, but on Wednesday, we'll be holding a public hearing on the rule change. So potentially the commission could vote on that, on the rule change on June 8th, barring any further discussion. And then following that June 8th date, it would have to be published again in the city record for kind of a mandatory waiting period. And then if this timeline were followed, the rule would go live on July 13th. And again, this is assuming, not a lot of further discussion. So if there's extra review sessions to discuss, it gets pushed back by 2 weeks or so. And so I have a whole variety of appendix slides providing details on the action itself, but because we presented this to the commission relatively recently, those are in the appendix. So that concludes the presentation. I am happy to answer any questions, but there are more slides with more details for those interested.
Great. Thank you very much, Ezra. Vice Chair Knuckles.
Thank you, Chair. Ezra, I don't know if you know this, but are there currently negotiations underway for air rights as we speak? And I ask that because the chart indicates that on July 13th, the rule changes would go into effect. So I'm just wondering if there's a negotiation now predicated on the existing numbers how would this rule change affect a current negotiation?
There's an early stage application that's submitted at PAS, under these regs. And the negotiations are, between private parties, I guess, in that respect. The rule change, assuming that would go live first, any application pursuant to this section would be subject to the updated rate.
Okay, thank you.
So just to follow up on that, Ezra, what stage in the process do you need to be for it to be applicable? Just so that I'm clear on the response to Vice Chair Knuckles. So at what point are you locked in on the new rate?
That's actually a good question for council as to whether it's literally when the CPC votes to approve the rule or after that additional 30-day period that it gets published and then goes live. So there's a little nuance there. And I can get back to the commission on that, but it would essentially be one of those two dates. And for a given application pursuant to this section, that would be when it's approved by CPC at that point. Now, applications pursuant to this section have a 60-day simultaneous referral period to both the community board and the borough president. Approval of the application would be following a 60-day referral period. It's a commission certification under this section. So again, the rule being live and whether an application that was undergoing it's hypothetical, I think, in this case, because it seems like, this rule change will probably go into effect before an application will go forward. But it does pose an interesting question as whether it's when the commission votes or after the 30-day period that it then gets put back into the city record. So I'll be sure to have more information for that on the next review session.
And we don't know of any current, just to follow up on Vice Chair Knuckles, it's not that there's something that's known to us that is midstream right now for which this would even be relevant. Is that correct?
Not that this would be relevant, but there is an application in the very, very early stages, pursuant to this section. So, in terms of relevancy, it's more the understanding that this CAPA process is quite far along. So,
got it. So this would likely for that application, this is way ahead of where they would be for this even to be a question as to what rule would be applicable. And also, I have note here that it's effective when the 30 days after publication is done. So that's the answer to that question. So okay, good, I got it. Thank you, Ezra. Let me see if there are other questions. Commissioner Cerullo.
Thank you, Chair. So Ezra, let me ask a couple of questions. I figure on Wednesday we'll just be hearing testimony since we're basically the applicant here. So I'm assuming this is we won't be getting the opportunity to ask questions on Wednesday of the department. And there's no question that the use of the funds that are accumulated through this program go to extremely important programming and other things for arts and culture. But I'm just trying to get an understanding about how we view because we're matching the increase in assessed value from, over the last, we'll use this 10-year period, right, 11 to 21, as the sort of identifier of what the new rate should be. And I guess I don't know how, if beyond getting that data, how the department looks at, how assessed values are actually determined, which I think is really important, especially since we're capturing fiscal 20 and fiscal 21 in this calculation, which, the assessed value doesn't always necessarily represent what's happening at the moment. There's phase-ins and caps that apply to the determination of assessed value. So we are to say that in this past 10 years, particularly using the last two, that we've seen a 40% increase over time. We may actually see the results of the past 2 fiscal years a few years from now, when the phase-in of what occurred in those years actually begins to be realized. So I'm just wondering whether or not the department analyzes that, so that we're not in the process of establishing a rate based on assessed value of property that 2 years from now won't be anywhere near what it is today. And obviously we're not going to reduce the rate once the rate has once it's established. So I just like to understand more about how the rate is determined in this case, how we're just matching what the assessed value was over time, and whether or not we consider the mechanism, because remember, assessed value for commercial property is, in most cases based on income and expense. And I think we're going to see the realities of income and expense in the last 2 years, once phase-in from previous years is eliminated, and we're going to see this number drop. And then what impact will that have on the industry, property owners, and whether or not deals will get done at that rate?
So that's great question. Jeff, if we bring up the presentation, go to slide 11, please. First things first, to the first point about how do we calculate assessed value, we are fully reliant on Department of Finance data. That comes through in our Pluto data that we pull from. And any given year, Pluto data is released in multiple versions, usually like version 1, version 2, version 3, roughly quarterly. And the version 3 is usually the most accurate for that given year. It kind of gives time, from my understanding, to go through any holes in the data and make sure that there aren't any like null sets, and fill in information. So what we have for the 2021 set is the V3, so the most accurate window of 2021 data. And one of the things that we thought was really interesting and surprising is that we had actually done the math back in, I want to say 2015. It was in advance of the actual comprehensive text amendment. We had done the math the old-fashioned way. And so we had that, we had a paper trail to how the outcome for that. And this is actually what it came out to then in 2014, 2015. So I would say at like a pretty good time in the real estate market was about the same that we have right now. So it was roughly $24 and some per square foot. So our interpretation is that the 2021 data reflected kind of the impacts of the pandemic on the area, because we would have expected it to be significantly higher. We would have expected it probably to be above $30, just based on the way real estate values tend to increase over time. So the 2021 values per square foot were roughly equivalent to what it was in 2014. So we're, I think that we just look at the numbers, but implicitly it does indicate, that the assessed values were relatively low in that fiscal year. And I'm happy to walk the commission through the math if interested, but this kind of is the more complicated version of how we calculate the rate. It looks at the total amount of building floor area in the theater subdistrict, and then that DOF assessed value. But again, to your earlier question, whatever DOF's inputs are what we work with.
I understand. I appreciate that. This is not an attempt to get so deep in the weeds, but I just from previous life experience, I do know that there's lots of variables that go into the development of the assessed value. It's interesting to me that what you saw in 14 or 15 is not that different than what you're seeing in 21. That's actually very interesting. I guess that what question, just as a follow-up thought, is that I do recall, and I could be wrong on some of the details. I was trying to find some of my notes from 16. I think they're actually in a file drawer downtown. That I think the rate of increase that was proposed in 16 was that 20? Was it 20%, if I remember correctly? And so, and now it's 40%. And obviously, this application did not succeed in the last round. So I'm wondering if the math is not different, and the percentage has now basically doubled, and yet we had difficulty moving this forward in 16. What is it about this moment in time that we have greater confidence that this could get done?
I'm not entirely clear about the 40% unless that's referring to the 2021% change from 2011. Is that the
Well, yes, aren't we using that sort of that 40% increase in assessed value as the number to then calculate the increase from the existing contribution rate to the new proposed contribution rate?
Yeah, so that represents the per square foot, the percentage change in per square foot value. That's correct. But the 2016 text amendment pegged it to 20% of the full transaction price. And my understanding, even though I would want to just double check to confirm, perhaps next review session, but my understanding is that the rate for the theater subdistrict contribution, what it was and still what it would be, is still quite close to 10% of the transaction value. It's on the lower end. It's typically less than what we might find in East Midtown. And so, yeah, the 40% isn't, it is a 40% growth, but the 20% was a full 20% of the transaction before. That's what we're proposing in 2016.
Yeah, it's very difficult. I apologize for not having it because I'm just trying to remember more of it than I have the actual paperwork or details in my possession, but I appreciate that. It'll be really interesting to see the thoughts of the public on this, but I appreciate your explanation on this, Ezra. Thank you, and thank you, Chair.
Of course. Thanks, Commissioner Strullo. Okay, that looks like all we've got on this item. Ezra, thank you very much. We will bring this to a public hearing on Wednesday. Ryan, let's go to our next item on the agenda.
Sure. The fourth item on our agenda is a pre-hearing review of a resolution concerning the use of video conferencing to conduct commission meetings. The hearing will take place on Wednesday. Our general counsel is here to answer any questions. We've discussed this in prior. This is just the required hearing per the open meetings law.
Any questions from the commission on this?
Are we just voting?
So is that Commissioner, sorry, is that Commissioner Goodrich?
Sorry, yes, that's me.
Commissioner Goodrich, go ahead.
I didn't realize my video was off. I'm sorry about that. Are we, just to clarify, are we voting and then?
So the hearing will be on Wednesday, and then our thought would that we would have the commission vote on this resolution on June 8th, prior to the open meetings law amendment ends our ability to sort of automatically have remote meetings. I will foreshadow that there is some discussion internally to look at ways to continue that, given the emergency order that is in place. And that the commission would have to then adopt another resolution to do that. But we'll be discussing that come June 6th, likely.
All right, thank you.
Other questions? Okay. All right, seeing none, we will move that resolution on video conferencing to conduct commission meetings to a public hearing on Wednesday. Ryan, do you want to move on to a new borough here?
Sure. So the fifth item on our agenda is a post-referral review of a non-ULURP modification to a previously approved authorization and authorizations pursuant to the Special Natural Area District in the Bronx Community District 8. Jutan Horseman is here to present.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon, Commission. So this is a post-referral presentation for the Delafield Estates non-ULURP modification. Next slide, please. The applicant, AYY26 LLC and Delafield Estates Homeowners Association, is proposing a non-ULURP modification to a previously approved large-scale residential development and 3 special natural area district authorizations to allow the placement of 19 buildings within the large scale. Next slide, please. The site is located in the Riverdale neighborhood within Community District 8 in the Northwest Bronx. Next slide. The site is in an R12 zoning district and within the Special Natural Area District. The project site, highlighted in red, is an 11.15 acre site. Next slide. 14 of the 33 original homes proposed have been built, which you can see the location of the homes in yellow. The uses in the area are predominantly single family to the north and west, where it is R12 zoning district. To the south and east, where it is an R4 zoning district, these areas are more mid-density. To the immediate south are 6 to 7 story buildings with some 12 to 15 story buildings slightly further away. Next slide, please. You can see in this aerial photo the single family buildings to the north and west and the larger buildings to the south and east. The site is accessed by West 246th Street before there's a switchback in the road that turns into Douglas Avenue and runs along the western side of the site. Next slide, please. Image A shows the view of the site from the main entrance along West 246th Street into the Delafield Estates. When entering the site, immediately to the right are some natural features such as the fountain, which is shown in image B. Images C and D show 2 areas along Delafield Way, which is along the large loop road within the site and shows where several of the proposed new buildings would be located. Next slide, please. For additional context for what's been built, images A and B show homes that were built as part of the originally built homes on the site. Images C and D show 2 newer buildings that have been completed within the past couple of years and were able to be built using the currently active large-scale approvals. Next slide, please. To give some history on the site, in 1980, the original site plan was approved, which sought 13 actions as part of the original large-scale residential development. The plan would have subdivided the site into 33 zoning lots, but the zoning lot subdivision never occurred, so the entire site is part of a single zoning lot today. 7 of the original 13 actions were never used or vested. The ones that were used and vested were to modify the distance between buildings and number of natural area authorizations in order to allow the proposal to be built within the natural area district. In 1987, the applicant came back for a modification to the original configuration and relocated several of the buildings. In 2011, the applicant came in with a restoration plan that was completed in 2013. And from this change, they closed the ring road where there were 2 cul-de-sacs before. This change created a full circle. There were site improvements that also occurred as the applicant was required to do cleanup and improvements to the site as part of the site mitigation. Next slide, please. Of the 33 original homes proposed, 14 were built, which are the homes shown in white. And the applicant is proposing to build the remaining 19 homes, which are the homes shown in the darker gray. The 19 homes they're proposing will be between 3,000 and 4,500 square feet and would be 2 stories with an attic and basement. Additionally, there's a 1,200 square foot pool planned behind the custodian's house at the 246th Street entrance. Next slide, please. Here's a comparison of the previous approval with the proposed modification. The original plan sought to cluster the homes in the northeast as well as abut one another as semi-detached. Under the proposal, each home would be a single-family building. There is about a 46,000 square foot building on the site, built on the site today. And by building the remaining 19 units, it'll add approximately 63,000 square feet to bring the total floor area to about 111,000 square feet, increasing the FAR from about 0.1 to about 0.23. In an R12 zoning district, it has a 0.5 max FAR. With the proposed modification, the proposal will not increase the unit count, total floor area, total open space, and would not need any additional bulk approvals. Next slide, please. In addition to the non-ULURP modification, the applicant is seeking 3 natural area district approvals. Because they're reconfiguring the location of the buildings, the applicant is modifying new topographic features, as well as impacting some of the trees and steep slope areas and steep slope buffers on the site, which requires the authorizations. To give some context to the natural area authorizations, there are 544 trees on the site today. 153 trees would be removed. However, 154 new trees would be replanted on the site to replace the trees being impacted. The lot coverage is at about 5.6% today. It would increase by 7.3% to be a total of about 12.9%. The hard surface area today is at about 17.9%. It would increase by about 14.3% to a total of about 32.2% of the lot. Next slide, please. On June 9th, 2020, CB8 voted against the project with 33 in support of the resolution, 1 opposed to the resolution, and 0 abstentions. CB8 noted that they were opposed to the application because a version of the project that had all the homes accessed directly off the loop road had not been presented to the committee. Next slide, please. Additionally, during public review, several changes were made to the proposal. The left image was what was referred in September 2019, and the right image is the current proposal with the changes. There was an agreement that occurred between the owner and the Riverdale Sanitation Corps for sewer improvements along West 246th Street. These improvements are important to ensure that there are no sewer pipe break issues. The owner agreed to build out the sewer along the entire length of West 246th Street along the property and has funded the project in an escrow account to ensure that this improvement occurs. This will allow the sewer to be improved by strengthening it. The legal agreement is also in your memo. This agreement was important because the applicant also modified the proposal to add several curb cuts for new driveway access to the site. Along 246th Street, there was 1 driveway, which will now be 3. And along Douglas, there were 2 driveways, which will now be 4. 6 of the driveways are paired closely to one another and separated by a landscape median. These driveways were required to fulfill fire department FDNY requirements. Additionally, several of the homes were repositioned or moved slightly to ensure that each new home met all yard and distance between building requirements. Next slide, please. To wrap up the proposal, the applicant is seeking a non-ULURP modification and 3 natural area district authorizations to build the remaining 19 homes that were originally planned as part of the large-scale residential development. Thank you.
Thank you, Jitan. Let me just recap a couple things. So you said same number of units.
Correct.
Same amount of open space.
Correct.
153 trees becomes 154 trees.
Correct.
The primary difference here is the fact that the access is not primarily through that ring road in the middle, as opposed to giving some direct access from the street. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that is a very accurate summary.
And it moves some of the homes a little further from one another within the existing site plan too. Is that also right?
Correct. Yeah. So as noted, in the northeast, there had been a cluster of homes, and as well as several other places where they were kind of semi-detached, where one was touching another or abutting another. And this made it so that each one was freestanding, single family. But again, one of the important points is that even with that change to being a fully single family development, it didn't increase any of the real impacts on the natural features when you look at the 2011 proposal versus the current plan.
And there's some concern about, there's some opposition to this. Can you articulate that a little bit so that we can understand it?
Yeah, so several of the neighbors had concerns about any additional access within the community on some of these new driveways. We took a look at it, and
neighbors outside or neighbors inside?
Neighbors outside. I should point out that the homeowners association within the Delafield Estates is supportive of this plan, as they are a co-applicant and they do have to sign on and agreed to this. So the neighbors that live there actually want to see this proposal completed, because it actually is something that when they bought into this development, that they assumed all these buildings would be built. So this actually is part of what they had as a part of a vision for this community. But some of the neighbors had concerns. One of the things they focused on were the driveways. I mean, this area today is all, there's no homes there. It looks natural. So having something built changes the context in the sense of going from nothing to something, but it was always planned to have that something there. It's just taken a long time to get to that point. But the owners that live in that community now, I think they like that there isn't anything there. And then the addition of the new driveways, they had a concern that, it changed it from a single point to several points. But again, when we looked at this from an environmental perspective, it didn't add, it was a negligible impact on the traffic and other, things that when we did the analysis. So we didn't have a direct concern with the addition of the driveways.
Okay, so putting aside that there might be a desire to rather leave it as is, opposed to have development, in the context of which framework of development and what might be the objection to it, it sounds like driveways off the street where they were not otherwise permitted, and there's not obviously an endless number of them, but the small handful of driveways that would be included here, that is the primary objection that has been articulated.
Yeah, I think that's the one that they have leaned most heavily into is the concern. I mean, some of the other concerns were about the sewer and the infrastructure that wouldn't be able to sustain the additional homes. But as noted, the owners are, they met with the Riverdale Sanitation Corps, and they actually had a agreement in order to have the owner build out that. So that was actually a very positive thing that came out of that.
That would have been present with the design of that community in any configuration, presumably. Issues of sewers, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let me see if there are other questions here. Commissioner Marine.
Thank you, Chair Garodnik. And you actually hit the nail on the head with the question that I was going to ask is the sewer capacity. Was the knowing that, 39, 38 homes, I forget the number right now, it's in that area, were going to be built eventually, were the sewers not sized for those capacities?
So the Riverdale Sanitation Corps is a private sewer system. I can't speak to how it all works, but I will say that they always knew that there would be the 33 total homes built on the site. So they had always assumed that would happen at some point. I think in general, a lot of the pipes for the sewer are very old. They're terracotta and they've been breaking over time. People in this community are aware of the sewer issues. And when things happen, the Riverdale Sanitation Corps has been very good about going in and fixing those problems. But this is actually getting ahead of it a little bit, where the developer was willing to, along the whole 246th Street section, put in this, and I don't know the details, but it's this kind of slip pipe, which will allow it to be flexible so that, when there's some weight and things on it, it will actually not break like the terracotta would. So it's something that they're actually doing across to basically replace any of the sewer. They've just done apparently a big upgrade in the Fieldston neighborhood for this. And so this is in line with what they're asking any improvements to be like.
So is the Delafield Estates then considered a planned urban development with its own private sewer system? Is because I'm hearing the Riverdale, sewer folks that are certainly not New York City DEP or New York City Sanitation. So is this a considered a planned urban development where they have to take care of their own sewer lines and connect to the city line?
The answer is I don't know about the planned urban development component, but yes, it is a private sewer where they do end up hooking into the main sewer line at some point, but it is fully a private sewer system. The
entire system within Delafield Estates?
Correct, yeah. The Delafield Estates as well as a larger area within the community as well. Yeah.
No, I realize that, but my question is really geared toward this application.
Oh, yes.
Thank you, Commissioner Marin. Vice Chair Knuckles.
Thank you, Chair. Jutan, if you look at, as I'm sure you have, the statement of the community board, I'm just wondering, is this a question of a communication issue or a lack of communication or maybe some bruised feelings? Because the land use committee, which I know by experience is quite exacting, seems to be saying that they have not had the opportunity to really consider this new plan. So how much of this is a question of interaction as opposed to these other issues?
So good question. The community board, so there was a little bit of a pause when this was initially referred out, where the applicant actually met with the neighbors and the Riverdale Sanitation Corps before the community board had their discussion. And that was actually an important moment for some of these agreements to happen and discussions to occur. The community board really wanted everything signed, sealed, delivered for them to be able to vote on with all the modifications and everything completed, but that wasn't realistic at the moment when the community board was in their public, their 60-day referral period. So when they were voting and some of the points in their whereas argument about, having good faith discussions as well as protecting of the sewer, and like a lot of those agreements were getting close or actually had just occurred right before this vote happened. And I would say that to their final vote point of not being able to see a proposal with all the homes connected to the ring road, that was actually never really discussed as part of the proposal. So it was never really within the scope of what was going to be proposed. And that was ultimately what they submitted as a recommendation. So I don't want to get into too much of why they submitted that recommendation versus something else, but that's what we received.
I see.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Commissioner Levin.
Yes, just picking up on that line of discussion, Jutan. It seems like this one's had a 15 or 20 month pause since the community board voted at the end of 2020. And there's correspondence in our package between the Bronx office and the then local electeds back and forth. And then it seems like everyone just took a time out. I understand your presentation to conclude that now is the time to move this one forward and that the Bronx office is ready to bring this to a conclusion along the lines of what you've presented. Is that correct? And what accounts for the pause?
Yeah, so.
Or that, what more importantly, what accounts for bringing it back now?
Good question. So after the committee board, there was about a 2-year period of time where the applicant was actually working on this. And there was a number of questions that came up between DOB issue questions, fire department. Basically, they were trying to work with a number of agencies in order to just coordinate all of the large scale questions that were raised and make sure that the plan that actually came before the commission could be approved and that it could be built. And there were several changes that happened based on that, where some of the small reconfigurations happened because they actually needed to move the building a little bit more. Additionally, the fire department required that each home had its own driveway as part of the FDNY requirements. And so that's one of the reasons that there's the 5 or the 3 driveways and the 4 driveways, even though it kind of looks like one driveway with a little slip of median between them. So really coordinating all those efforts. And then again, it was during the COVID break. So some things weren't happening as quickly as maybe they could have had it been normal business days. So it did take a long time, but it was really to ensure that when we did come before the commission, which we're doing today, that this is actually a plan that can be built without needing to modify it further.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Levin. Okay. All right. Jutan, thank you. Before you go, let me just express on behalf of the agency and the commission our deepest appreciation to you for your service at city planning. For those of you who don't know, I think today's the day, huh? Today is it, your last day? Today is
the last day, yes.
So today is Jutan's last day, and he is, after 14 years at city planning, is going to go to be the land use director for the Bronx Borough President, which is bittersweet because we're sorry to lose him, but also we're glad that we'll be able to continue to work with him and Jutan. So on behalf of all of us, let me just say thank you for everything. It's been a pleasure working with you in the short time that I've had to cross over with you. It's been a great pleasure, and thank you.
Good luck, Jutan.
Good luck, Jutan.
Thank you.
Congratulations. It's wonderful. Wonderful.
Thank you, Jutan. All right.
Excited, Jutan.
Talk to you soon.
Good man. Good man.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Let's move on. Ryan, I think we have some council mods.
Yes. So item 6 on our agenda is a scope determination for a city council modification to 103 Lee Avenue rezoning in Brooklyn Community District 1. Our presenter is Syed Ahmed.
Good afternoon, commissioners. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. This is a city council modification of zoning area boundaries. Next slide, please. This application for a zoning map amendment from R6 and R6C13 to R7X C24 district with a related application to map MIH area was approved by the City Planning Commission on March 16, 2022. The rezoning boundary included 2 properties. 103 Lee Avenue, outlined in red, is the applicant site. Under the proposed rezoning to R7XC24, the applicant site would be developed with a mixed-use 8-story building with 52 dwelling units, of which 16 would be permanently affordable. In addition, the site would provide approximately 8,000 square feet of ground floor commercial space. The other property in the rezoning area is a triangular lot 100 Lee Avenue that is south of the applicant site. This site is not controlled by the applicant and is currently developed with a 1-story commercial building with 7 retail stores. This is the site City Council modification is excluding from the proposed rezoning area. If in future the site was developed under the proposed R7XC24 district, it would have yielded 44 units of housing, of which 13 would have been permanently affordable. Under the existing R6C13 district, 100 Lee Avenue could be developed with 17 dwelling units with ground floor commercial space, and none of the units would be affordable. The difference in the production of housing between the proposed R7XC24 district and the existing R6C13 district would be the loss of approximately 27 units, of which 13 would have been permanently affordable. Next slide, please. The City Council, in a letter to the Commission dated May 16, excluded the non-applicant site 100 Lee Avenue outlined in yellow from the proposed zoning map amendment and from the MIH area mapping. The City Council modified boundary now include the applicant site 103 Lee Avenue outlined in orange. Next slide, please. The City Council amendment of the zoning map boundaries and the MIH map area is within scope. This concludes my presentation. I will be happy to answer any questions. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Syed. Let's see if there are questions. Commissioner Goodridge?
This is my bad, but I just want to clarify this. So the new proposal is for 7 units of less affordable housing, or it's for units of the modification is for more affordable housing?
So by excluding 100 Lee Avenue, which is a soft site and it is underdeveloped, the City Council is reducing the potential for more housing. And that site would have yielded under the proposed rezoning 44 units instead of 17 units. And out of 44 units, 13 would have been affordable if it remains in the proposed rezoning area.
This may be, do we know why they're proposing this, or it's just?
They said that they don't want to put pressure on commercial users on that site, and rezoning might, displace them or force them to move.
Other questions, Commissioner? No. Okay. Let me see if there are other. This, of course, is not the first. When I'm sure will not be the last of this type, where we're seeing shrinking of district boundaries. So obviously, it's a lost opportunity, but something that we do see and we continue to see. Okay, let me see if there are other questions. Okay, seeing none, I'm going to ask for an assent by voice vote to send a letter that the proposed modifications here are within scope as the department is recommending. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. Okay.
I'm not, I know it's not, I know we're talking about scope, but I think you know my feelings on the lack of affordable housing, but yeah.
This is one for Commissioner Bernie's I suppose so vote.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So.
Okay. All those I suppose so. Okay, we're not going to create a special category for Commissioner Bernie or Commissioner Goodrich, but we got you. We'll call it an abstention, Commissioner Goodrich, for this. Or no? Just so we have it correct for the record.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sure. Let's just do no, just so it's
okay.
clear.
We'll call it a no. We'll call it a no. Okay. On scope, we have a no. Okay. Thank you. Let me move back to Ryan for the next item.
Certainly. So the 7th item on our agenda is being laid over. We actually have some technical questions for the council, and so we will hold a special review session on Wednesday for the scope determination on this item.
Okay.
So we can
Great.
move on to
let's do
votes. Yeah. So for consideration on May 25th, 2022, staff prepared reports. Actually, so for Weatherall Street and 67th Avenue, we will also be laying over the vote on this item on Wednesday. There are some outstanding requests for details of the building, which we are waiting for the applicant to provide. And so we will provide those to the commission prior to the vote. So you'd had the report in your package, but we'll share that again If there's any further questions on this one, staff is here to discuss. Otherwise, we can move on. Okay. So for the NYPD Queens Special Victim Services, Haikang Yang is here to discuss the department's position. Haikang?
Oh, hi guys. Sorry, my video is what's happening here. So briefly, sorry. Department of City Planning supports the applicant's proposal to relocate the NYPD's Queens Special Victim Squad to this appropriate location. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Right. For 318 College Road, which is a new single-family dwelling, actually, Jutan will be here to discuss the department's position on this. Jutan?
Little encore, I suppose.
Yes.
So I wanted to start by addressing a concern in many of the letters received by the to the commission, which was that the lot size and lot width does not meet the minimum lot requirements or size requirements, and that the zoning lot should have never been subdivided. And in our 1-2 zoning district, the lot size requirement is 5,700 square feet, and the applicant's lot is 9,630 square feet. So it does meet the minimum lot size. The lot width requirement is 60 feet. And while the College Road width will be about 34.5 feet, the site is a through lot and has approximately 71 feet of frontage along the Tibbet Avenue side to the east. So it meets the minimum lot widths as well. So the asks from the letters is that it does actually meet the zoning lot requirements. So the Bronx believes that the 318 College Road new building application meets the findings and intentions of the Special Natural Area District, and that the commission should support this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Jutan. And I will note, if I failed to say it before, that we are going to schedule Delafield Estates for a vote as well. So just wanted to note that. Thank you again. Thank you for the encore. All right.
Thank you.
All right. Next, we have the Kelvison residents, 180 Sycamore Street and 426 Lamont Avenue. All are certifications pursuant to the special districts in the Bronx and Staten Island, and the department believes that the findings have been met on those items. For post-hearing follow-up, we have 7739 Bly Place rezoning. I believe Scott is here to give a little follow-up.
Great. Good afternoon, Commissioners, Chair Karatnik. So this is just to provide a summary of materials posted to the Chair's briefing package last Friday and this past Friday. First, a resolution from a Kew Garden Hills neighborhood-specific committee within Community Board 8 that recommended the full CB to approve the application, which was approved unanimously, 9-0 at the time, and which identified the building as a benefit to the community, specifically referencing much needed community facility and commercial space and the proposed housing opportunities. It also identified the proposal as a natural extension of the CB sponsored Kew Garden Hills rezoning from 2019, which promoted larger single family homes to the west of the project area. Second is a petition from over 1,000 residents of CD8 in support of the application as announced by the applicant during the public hearing. Third, a detailed summary provided by the applicant of their community outreach prior to and during ULURP. This was provided as a response to public hearing speakers and public comments received, indicating that the project was not adequately presented to the CB before and after certification. 4 is a letter from State Senator Stavisky, which is included, indicating her opposition. And finally, as requested from the CPC during the hearing, a zoning analysis comparing the proposed R6A and R6B district is provided. And that R6B district was recommended by the borough president in his conditional disapproval recommendation, and which was presented as a means to reduce height and density. In addition, the applicant expressed a commitment beyond CPC consideration to reduce the height of the proposed building by 2 stories, but still within an R6A district. The 3 are compared in a zoning analysis spreadsheet in the package. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Questions here? Great, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So on 11th Street and 34th Avenue rezoning, I will one note that Commissioner Ramprasad is recused on this item, and then I'll ask if there are any further questions on this. Right.
Questions on this?
Okay.
I see none.
Similarly for 41 Summit Street, if there are any further questions on this item. All right. And finally, we are at the thereto, the MTA site at 806 9th Avenue. And Sylvia Lee is here with some further discussion. Sylvia.
Thanks, Ryan. Good afternoon, commissioners. Chair Garatnik. Filling in for Andy Kentu, our lead planner on the.
Oops. You just, yeah. You muted yourself one more time, Sylvia.
Okay, it keeps popping in and out. Hopefully this stays on mute. I apologize. As you may recall, Andy at the last post-hearing follow-up noted that with respect to the Rail Control Center, the RCC annex in the new development, any alternative that proposes to reduce or eliminate the amount of office square footage or locate the MTA employees elsewhere is essentially unworkable. To that end, the MTA sent a letter to the commission on May 10th, affirming their support for this application and the mission critical nature of the expansion to the operations of the New York City subway system. That letter was included in your Friday package on May 13th. And second follow-up is a technical clarification in response to Commissioner Goodrich's question about whether the affordable units AMIs are absolute numbers or averages. So AMIs in this context.
You're muted, Sylvia. Just got muted again. We just lost a sentence.
Yeah.
Just a sentence. That's all.
It was just getting good too.
So much suspense. So I was saying that the AMIs in this context indicate what households, given their income levels, may be eligible for affordable units in this building. And the bands reflect absolute floors and ceilings of their incomes. So for example, here, HPD's proposal is between 40 and 80% AMIs. And that means that it would make families with household incomes between 40 and 80% AMIs eligible for the affordable units, whereas a family making more than 80% AMIs will not be eligible. So this is not only applicable to this project, it's generally how it works. We thought that it's useful to have a reminder anyway. And then lastly, to the point that Commissioner Levin made at the last session, I will reiterate that the proposed zoning text in its current form is narrowly crafted to specifically support this specific project rather than widely applicable, which we know would be of concern here. That said, we do truly appreciate CB4's hard work on this and are actively exploring potential ways to incorporate some of the board's suggestions into the zoning text. So we'll have more to report on that end at a later session. So that's all for my update. Happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you, Sylvia. Commissioner Goodrich.
I do have a quick question. I didn't have time to, researched it a little bit, but one of the comments made at the hearing was that Hudson Yards and the surrounding area had already built low-income housing, and that this, I know that their contention is that this was the one for moderate, but I was actually wondering if that was true, if like there were other surrounding, if there were so many low-income housing that was built in that area, because that doesn't, I don't know, it didn't really strike me as accurate, but I just wanted to ask because it would have come before the commission. So.
Thanks, Commissioner Goodrich. I would say that we as a city just don't have amount of low-income housing is too much low-income housing. I will say that CB4 compared to some of the other areas have had a lot of new developments, including mixed income developments with market rate and lower income units. I wouldn't say that, I wouldn't characterize the area as being inundated with lower income housing.
I think if I remember correctly, I think the comment was you know, there were 10 buildings and Hudson Yard had like 10 buildings. And then this was like the one building that they negotiated for moderate income. And I thought I want to clarify if that's, so thank you.
Yeah, so maybe that's something that we can further clarify at the next post-hearing follow-up. I think it might be helpful to show maybe some map and visual to note, you know, surrounding developments. That's a good question.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Goodrich. Commissioner Levin.
Yeah, thank you, Sylvia. First off, thank you for your comments about taking a closer look at the text. I appreciate your recognizing the importance of working with the community board here. And I do think, you know, one of the most powerful comments I heard was, gee, what does it do to community's confidence in public process if you make a deal and then the deal gets ignored? I think particularly in this political climate, it's very important for us to be consistent. So I'm glad you're working on that. On the affordable housing thing, Commissioner Goodrich, if you just imagine all the buildings that have been built west of Times Square, all the way over to the river, that great spine of skyscrapers that have gone up in the last 15 years, those were all built according to the very first inclusionary housing version, R10. So that has a tremendous cluster of low income, permanently affordable units that never came before the commission because it's just all pursuant to zoning. CB4 does have on its website, I believe, still a map of the kind, Sylvia, that you referred to that quantifies where all the units are. But all the big development that you've seen in Board 4 in the last stretch of time has had low income housing in it of the inclusionary flavor. And then in addition, a whole lot of supportive housing and, you know, special, you know, programs that are supported by HPD.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Levin. Commissioner Marin.
Thank you, Chair Garodnick. So my question would, you know, having heard the colloquy between Commissioner Goodrich and Commissioner Levin, I would argue that while affordable units have been built, what are the AMI levels that have been provided? Because if we look at HPD's definition of AMIs and affordable, you know, you can go as high as 165. So my question would be, out of the, if we are able to find out, maybe from the Real Estate Board of New York, those buildings that have been built, what are the AMIs in those buildings? Because to say they're affordable is really just a category that is non-definable if you don't give the AMIs, knowing that the city is really lacking at the 40% of AMI level. That's the more egregious affordable housing cluster that we are facing today.
Thank you, Commissioner Murding. I think all of those are really good comments. Thank you for your being really, you know, thoughtful on this. I will say that, you know, to Commissioner Levin's point, you know, a lot of the affordable units that have come to this neighborhood as part of new developments are, you know, inclusionary housing, right? So it's in mixed income market rate and lower income sort of mixed buildings. This is a rare opportunity to leverage a publicly owned site to produce, you know, 100% affordable housing. So, you know, I believe that my colleagues at HP are doing their best to make the most out of it. And then at the same time, working with the community and we'll continue to work with the community and the council member through the council stage to finalize the income bands. But we will provide another follow-up on the to clarify the housing picture at the next session. Thanks for your questions.
Great. Thank you, Sylvia. Thank you, Commissioner Marin. That looks like it's it. So thank you, Sylvia, for the update. And Ryan, is there anything left for us today?
No, there are no further items on this review session agenda. So
that is what I thought you were going to say. And so with that, I want to thank the commissioners for your good questions and your presence here today. Of course, the staff of the department of city planning for all of your hard work, including a couple of newcomers, and a farewell to one of our veterans. Thank you all for everything you are doing to make it all happen. We will see you Wednesday, the 25th, for our public hearings and votes at 10 o'clock in the morning. Thanks, everybody.
See you Wednesday.
Thank you.
Bye.